Imagine this. You're in the heat of one of the bloodiest battles of the biggest war known to the history of mankind. The Battle of Monte Cassino, World War II. Part of an artillery company, you rain fire onto the enemy positions. There have been 3 other attempts to secure these positions over the course of the past 5 months, all of which have proven very costly and unsuccessful. You can't afford to fail for a 4th time. And even though you're doing your very best, your allies on the front line are requesting more and more artillery support in order for them to make a breakthrough. But there's only so much you can do. There's only so many men that can operate and reload the guns. And in a slight pause from all the chaos that's going on around you, you glance into the distance and you can't believe your eyes. A literal 200-kilogram brown bear carrying an ammunition crate rushing to your aid. Following the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact in the beginning of the Second World War, the Soviets declared that the Polish state, previously invaded by Axis forces on the 1st of September 1939, no longer existed, effectively breaking off any prior relations they had with Poland. Roughly 325,000 Polish citizens were taken as prisoners of war by the Soviet authorities and were deported to work camps throughout the Soviet Union. 2 years later in 1941, however, due to the pressure from both the British government and the Polish government in exile, which at the time was based in London, and given the fact that the Axis forces broke the non-aggression pact and invaded the Soviet Union, the Soviets agreed to set most of the Polish prisoners free and let them organize a military formation on Soviet soil, which would be later known by the informal name of Anders' Army, named after its commander, Władysław Anders. The initial idea behind this army was to assist the Soviet forces fighting against the Germans on the Eastern Front, where the Germans had the upper hand. But the Soviets soon realized that this war went downhill for them very fast, and they had barely enough food rations to feed their own troops, let alone the Polish forces. So, in March of 1942, Joseph Stalin agreed to evacuate the Poles to Iran, where they would be put under the operational control of the British government. It was here where the Polish troops were stopped at a railway station in Hamadan, Iran, while en route to join the British troops, where they encountered a young boy alongside a brown bear cub. Given the unusual sight, some of the soldiers gathered around to see what was going on. They were informed that the bear's mother had recently been shot by hunters, and that he was now an orphan, being cared for by the boy. The soldiers took pity on the bear cub, because it was very much like them, themselves having been left without a family or a home as well. They decided to bring the animal with them and offered the boy some Persian coins, a chocolate bar, a Swiss Army knife, and a can of beef in exchange for the bear cub, and the young boy accepted, ultimately changing the bear's life forever, sending it on an adventure that a bear could only dream of. For the next 3 months, the troops and the bear were stationed in a refugee camp near Tehran. They took care of that little bear cub like it was a baby, feeding it condensed milk from an old vodka bottle. A particular group of soldiers from the 22nd Artillery Supply Company grew quite close to the bear and decided to name him Wojtek, which means Happy Warrior, and so Wojtek became the mascot of the company. Over the course of the next year, the troops alongside the bear were stationed at multiple Allied bases throughout the Middle East, and soon enough, Wojtek grew up and so did his appetite. He gave up the milk and the soldiers would donate part of their rations to feed the ever-growing animal. He would eat almost anything, ranging from fruit, marmalade, honey, syrup, and even beer, which became his favorite drink. When his bottle was empty, he would sadly look through the opening to see where the rest of the beer was, waiting for someone to take pity on him and serve him another. Aside from drinking beer, Wojtek copied much of his behavior from the humans around him. He would drink coffee in the mornings and enjoy the occasional cigarette, only accepting already lit ones and turning down the others, where he would take a puff or two and then eat the rest of it. They taught Wojtek to salute and to march in line, staying on 2 feet. He would also enjoy wrestling with the soldiers. As he got even bigger and stronger, the soldiers would wrestle with him 2 or 3 at a time. The men even taught Wojtek how to pick up new recruits and hold them upside down by their boots, to make them think that they were going to be eaten. But of course, this was just for giggles. In reality, he was very docile, and would often sleep cuddled up with the soldiers inside the tents. Imagine the horror of being picked up by a bear and then having the men around you laughing at you as you think you're going to be eaten. Probably a little bit disconcerting if you ask me. If nowadays some of the stuff discussed would be considered animal abuse, just remember that at this time they didn't even know smoking was a dangerous activity. Whilst constantly being relocated at various camps, Wojtek made quite a reputation for himself. When the Poles moved to a large Allied military camp in Iraq, Wojtek allegedly stole a clothesline of ladies' underwear, belonging to female personnel stationed in the area. He also learned how to break into the communal showers and turn on the showers on his own, which proved to be a problem because water was a scarce resource in the Middle Eastern heat, and it was rationed, which sometimes led to shortages. Eventually, the Polish troops arrived in Egypt, where they were reassigned to fight alongside the British 8th Army in the Italian campaign. The British ships, which were to carry the Polish troops, had very strict regulations, and prohibited mascots and other pet animals on board. But for the Poles, leaving Wojtek behind was not an option. To get around this restriction, Wojtek was officially drafted into the Polish army and listed as a private of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, with his very own paybook and serial number, and off they sailed for Italy. During the Fourth Battle of Monte Cassino, Wojtek observed the soldiers rushing around conveying ammunition, and he stepped in to help. Wojtek helped his unit by carrying ammunition crates, which would normally require 4 men to do so, never dropping a single one of them. For his service in the Battle of Monte Cassino, Wojtek was promoted to the rank of corporal, and in recognition of his popularity, a depiction of a bear carrying an artillery shell was adopted as the official emblem of the 22nd Artillery Supply Company. With the war slowly coming to an end, the problem of what was going to happen to Wojtek rose. As the Polish soldiers scattered around the world, it wasn't clear where the bear would live. The soldiers were afraid that if he were to go back to Poland, the newly formed Soviet-controlled government would adopt him as a symbol of communism, which didn't really sit right, with an army formed up of former prisoners of the Soviet Union. The best solution that they could think of was to send him to the UK, where he lived the rest of his days in the Edinburgh Zoo, where he became somewhat of a local celebrity, often being visited by his old comrades, which, much to the displeasure of the zookeepers, would often toss Wojtek beer bottles and lit cigarettes and sometimes even jump in his exhibit to wrestle with him, just like in the old days. However, all good things in life eventually come to an end. Corporal Wojtek passed away in December of 1963, aged 21 in the Edinburgh Zoo, leaving behind the story of history's bravest bear. He may never have stepped foot in Poland, but he was as Polish as a bear could get. His legacy lives on to this day. Statues depicting Wojtek can be found in both Krakow, Poland, as well as Edinburgh. The Imperial War Museum and the Sikorsky Museum in London also have memorials. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to hear more amazing animal stories, you can check out our video on Ubre Blanca, Fidel Castro's genetically modified cow. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch us next time.